everybody, welcome back to another edition of PD and P-Dubs Unscripted here, and good to be with you, P-Dubs.
Hey, good to be with you, PD, and everybody else. Happy day to you. Hope you're enjoying the new spring-like weather we're having, and it actually is spring.
Right, as you brought up this weekend in worship, it was the last day of winter, and look at that, the couple days after there, I mean, yesterday was beautiful, which was Monday, March 20th.
Mm-hmm.
Today looks like another beautiful day.
Yeah, it sure does. We'll have a couple, spring-like days, and as spring is, there'll be high winds and, some rain coming here and there.
But yeah, I mean, it did feel good yesterday getting out there and using the grill for the first time, I think, this calendar year.
Oh,
yeah.
Good for you.
I was like, I haven't grilled and I don't have gathering place. I got kind of a freer night, so I'm like, I'm going to go and grill.
Nice. Way to go. Mine took a bit of a hit over the winter on one of the high wind days, so I've got to do some repairs. So thankfully I had the old indoor Hamilton Beach non-smoking thing grill. So we grilled hamburgers on Sunday too, indoors.
But yeah, it felt good to get out there and grill again.
Yeah, that's cool. It's a fun thing to do when the weather gets warmer. So, what are we talking about today?
We're going to do a deeper dive on what I preached upon this past weekend, and that was Jesus healing the blind man in John chapter 9.
Yeah.
And we're not going to read it all like we've done in previous deeper dives. You did that this weekend 3 times.
3 times, and I messed up almost every time, through 40-some verses.
41, I believe.
41 verses, and but you do what you can.
Right. God bless you. I mean, I almost got up there like, why do I need to preach? You gave a sermon pretty much reading that.
There you go. It was about as long as a sermon, it felt like. Anyway, yeah, so it's a great text, and man, is it loaded with all sorts of layers of things to pull out of.
Right.
And I know this is one of your favorite texts.
I do like it because it's just the simplicity of what the blind man did. He's like, here's my story. I was blind and now I can see. And there, like you said, there's so much in there. Like it starts even kind of beginning, kind of picked up, I thought, about what you preached upon the previous weekend with Jesus, with the woman at the well, that divine appointment. Even here, like as he passed by.
Yeah.
Like, he was walking through, he saw the blind man.
Right.
So it starts off right there at the beginning there in verse 1.
Yeah, kind of, almost feels like a day in the life of Jesus,
Right.
As he's walking by, there's this man, and then engages a question from his disciples about the man, whether he sinned for his blindness, or his parents, and Jesus tells him, no, this is so that the works of God can be revealed.
Right, and so even that's like, so 3 verses in here, 4 verses in, we got a lot you can talk about with like even that question that the disciples asked of who sinned, this man or his parents. And as much as we know that all the negative stuff that we see in this world is caused by sin in general, we're guilty of times of saying, is it because of this sin in particular?
Right.
So we can relate, I think, to the question of the disciples of like, whose sin is it that this man was born blind?
And maybe it goes back to like, each sin has a consequence, right? Like, right. So, I mean, is that where people are kind of trying to connect, the consequence to a particular sin? It's almost like working backwards as they see this man born blind. Like, well, what caused this? What sin? And because it seems to be like human nature to connect that way.
Kind of that ripple effect, almost like it just kind of sees that consequences. And I remember hearing a speaker once talk about that, like, when we're going to commit a sin, we don't think about like what's downstream.
Right.
And I think he used an example of like somebody having an affair.
Yeah.
And saying like, that person, when they have that, doesn't think, maybe, somebody finds out, I end up getting divorced. Now I'm spending my holidays alone because my family doesn't want anything to do with me. And how, like, you don't think about that. So you don't think what's downstream when you commit a sin.
Right. As you said, the ripple effect, like it really impacts more than just you and the person that you sinned against. It does seem to spread out and has the possibility to affect other people.
Right.
So,
I mean, that's why I can understand them asking this, even though we know that it really just goes back to the Garden of Eden and the sin of Adam and Eve.
Right. It's a broken, fallen world, and, our bodies are no longer perfect. And so, there's that. it's just a condition that this man was born with.
Right.
Just as there are a lot of people who are born with certain health issues, it has nothing to do with, their sinfulness.
Right. And so
On a particular sin,
Right. And so the poor guy was born blind, and like I kind of said in my sermon, like, I wasn't really thinking about that, but yeah, like, I don't know, is it complete darkness or is it just extremely blurry sight?
Right.
It doesn't really say, but either way, you can't really function very well.
No. And, I mean, in nowadays, at least there's certain tools and technologies for people who are blind that they can operate, fairly well in this world. But, how did he get along? How did he learn things?
Right. I would think he'd be seen as like an outcast, like, oh, we got to help him out, do this for him, and do all this. And,
Yeah.
and we mean I feel like when you look through like the Bible and think of that day and age, it doesn't seem like they were the most loving to people that had ailments or that were different from them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they kind of sometimes you see where they just kind of avoid.
Right.
I think of like the Good Samaritan. All the two examples of those who walked by or went to the other side, but yet the Samaritan came. Interestingly, you mentioned that about how people react. I mean, in verse, what is that? Where the neighbors are brought in.
Verse 8.
Verse 8. John brings in how the neighbors know him. And they're like, oh, well, they all know him because they're like, oh, we've seen him before.
He's a beggar.
Yeah. So, yeah, isn't that something? Here's someone who's blind. He can't function like everyone else. And now is not seen as a blind man, but seen as a beggar because he has to beg, right? Probably. But yeah, they seem to know him and what he looks like. And even some like, well, that's not the guy, but he sure looks like him.
Right.
Kind of
it's
thing.
his doppelganger.
Yeah, right.
But what are like kind of, and I know I kind of talked about, I know a couple of people brought up to you and they brought a little to me after the sermon, like how I was kind of talking about, the sound of the spit, like Jesus making that. And I was just kind of hiding the idea that like, that's what he relied upon is his hearing.
Mm-hmm.
And that was probably a sound, it's not the most appealing sound.
Right.
But for him, that was a healing sound.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the saliva of Jesus mixed with the mud. I was talking to a couple of friends of mine. They're like, look at that, the dust of the ground in which Adam was formed and created. This man, he receives like almost a new creation in Jesus through, the same mud that created Adam. You know what I mean? So, and then you get a little baptismal reference, go wash in the pool of Siloam,
Right. So, and like in both of those, like when you look at like baptism, it's God's word and his command and the water that make it special. And this was a command because I double checked that when it says go wash, it's in the imperative form. So he's commanding him to go there.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is kind of funny because I guess when I think of somebody giving a command, you think it's going to be like mean or aggressive sounding.
Right.
But this, I'm sure it wasn't sounding like, go wash in the pool of Siloam.
Yeah.
It was probably, hey, go wash in the pool of Siloam.
Yeah. It is a directive and it's from an authority figure. I guess it just connects to the authority and power of Jesus, who he is, and his word, right? And I just find it so ironic that the name of the pool, Siloam, means sent, which then the man, while he is not sent out, but now he is sent out among others, and people are noticing him and what happened, and so like you and I, as believers, and everyone else, we're baptized, we're commanded, we're sent, right? Jesus, go and make, right? Back to commands. And so here he's witnessing.
Right, and he's just telling them, this is what I had. Like, love there's, when the neighbors are kind of questioning and said, oh, it's him, or no, it's not him, but he looks like him. And he's like, I am the man. And so they said to him, then how are your eyes open? His answer is, the man called Jesus made mud, anointed my eyes, and said to me, go to Siloam and wash.
Yeah.
So I went, and I washed and received my sight.
Boom, boom, boom. Easy as that, right?
Just simple. He doesn't go like in the great detail, just like, here's the facts.
Yeah.
And now I can see.
Yeah, it's almost Like, that's the prescription, right? Like, Jesus is the physician.
Right.
All right, I'm going to write you a script. Well, first I'm going to put this mud on your eyes, and now go to the pool, wash. Okay. All right, I'm going to go do this, and now I'm healed. You know, it's like we go to the doctor, he does some things, and here's a script. Go to the pharmacy and get the medication. And then after a time, we're better, you know.
And it even shows his faith even in that moment, like, because he could have said, like, really? You're putting mud on my eyes.
Yeah, what is this craziness?
And now you're telling me to go wash in a certain pool?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to rub this mud off my eyes and just keep on going because I don't believe what this guy's saying.
Yeah, simple faith, as you've been saying. Simple faith. I mean, he just is obedient, and he obviously trusted Jesus. His heart was in a place where he's like, hey, I'm ready to be healed. And if someone's paying attention to me and coming to me and touching me and trying to help me, why wouldn't I act upon what they say? Where, as you said, he was kind of an outcast, and like people knew him, but they considered him a beggar. Like, who would approach a beggar?
And you wonder too, like, and maybe this is my bad not being up with my Old Testament laws, but like, would touching his eyes be seen as like something that would make you dirty? Because I mean, there's such all that cleanness.
Uncleanness. Well, you get right down to it, PD. When did he do this miracle? What
Sunday.
on the Sabbath. Yeah, so that's what got the Pharisees' hackles all up on the, and why they jumped in and interjected. But I just think this is really cool how it starts with a question from Jesus' disciples, just trying to learn something from Jesus, but they have their preconceived notions. Then the neighbors get involved, and then Jesus, right, he approaches them, he personally gets involved, and now all of a sudden the Pharisees are like, hey, we got to interrogate this guy. Right. What's going on?
Oh, we don't like his answers. So now we got to go to his mom and dad.
Yeah, all right. Somebody, where's this guy live? Okay, well, let's Google his address. Let's go 325 Jerusalem Street in whatever town this was.
But it's just, I just love how they don't take his words for it. And so like, oh, well, we got to go to his parents because his parents, they're the source.
Yeah. And, well, he's of age, so like it's not like he's a child,
right.
And I love that's the parents. That's like, well, he's a grown man.
Talk to him.
Go talk to him.
Like, what if like somebody asked you like to ask questions about your kids about like something they did?
Yeah,
it'd be like, what do you think? Well,
yeah, I'd be doing the same thing. The parents are like, why are you asking me? Like, he'll be glad to share. And he was. Right. The man was glad to share.
And like what's interesting, it's funny because like it talks about his parents being afraid of what they could do to him about being thrown out.
Yep.
Yet he didn't care about what they could do to him.
No, because he'd already been outcast.
Right.
So that's the beauty of it. Like, that's a great point. The parents are like kind of like, I don't know. We don't want to get involved. We want to still be part of the temple life and things like that, but he had nothing to lose.
Right, and even for like his parents, like I think about like this day and age where people don't want to maybe commit or be outspoken about their faith because they're afraid of what other people how they might view them or treat them. Because you're just one of those uber Christians. You're one of those like Christians. We don't want to really talk to you because that's all you're gonna do.
Mm-hmm. And I sense that's why you like this. Is that it really is just matter of fact. It's stating the facts. It's the simplicity of the witness, wherein so many of us in our time, we try and read books. We try and like listen to people speak about what is the best approach to share our faith with someone. What steps do I have to take, and what questions do I have to anticipate so that I can prepare myself when I do share. And here, the guy, he didn't rehearse anything. He's just like, hey, this is what happened to me. This is what happened to me. I don't know anything about Jesus.
I don't know,
but I think he must be a prophet.
Right. I don't know what made that mud special besides him spitting in it. I don't understand. He's like, because I mean, you probably didn't think, anybody could just spit, make mud, and heal people. I mean, because if that was the case, I'd be saying, hey, somebody go spit some mud, go rub it on my eyes, and then I could see 20/20 without my glasses or contact.
I mean, maybe we ought to go out after this recording and like find some mud. I don't know whose spit we'll use. I mean, like we don't have Jesus spit, but we got to help you, man.
And do we have the pool of Siloam nearby?
Well, we got the baptismal font.
Same. It's still got God's command and His word with that.
Right. Even though it's Palatine tap water.
Oh, we can't have special water.
No.
Oh, I was hoping maybe water from the Fox River, my hometown.
Oh, there you go. We could do that. We could make a field trip.
Well, who knows what infection I'm going to get from that dirty water. But his story doesn't change.
No.
It's just, hey, I don't know. Yeah, I was blind. I see now. Here's what took place.
Yeah. And then I think, your favorite part, and I do appreciate it too, is like, after being interrogated the second time, isn't it the second time where he's like, well, do you want to be one of his disciples?
Right. It's like, and that had to get him fired up.
Oh, man. And there's a part of me that wonders if he knew that, or if he was just like
was he doing that to torque him off? Or just like, what was his tone of saying it? Like, do you want to be one of his disciples?
Yeah, I mean, all right, you questioned me the first time, fine. Then you go bug my parents, and then you haul me back in, and you don't have any different questions. It's the same thing, so it makes you wonder, like, do you really want to be his disciple? Do you want to be a follower of his? And
like, I just feel like it's sarcasm there.
It feels a little snarky.
And it'd be one thing if like his story changed. I mean, you think of like a court case or like any like movie you see about court. Mm-hmm. When they have conflicting stories or they're changing their story all the time, then you're like, okay, this person's lying. They're not telling the truth.
Right.
But he never changed his story.
No, he never did. And then their reaction of just like, they reviled him, right? And like, who you would teach us,
so offended that he would teach them.
And so that is that really reveals a lot about where the Pharisees were in their heart with regard to their thoughts toward Jesus. But that whole, as we get into like verse 30, the man answered, "Why is this? Why?" He says, "Why? This is an amazing thing." I think that's where, this is an amazing thing. You do not know where he came from, and yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners, but if anyone is a worshiper of God and does his will, God listens to him. Never since the world began has it been heard that anyone opened the eyes of a man born blind. So this is a first. I mean, that's another thing of like, maybe that answers the question of why everybody's getting involved. Like, this is so crazy. Nobody's seen this before.
Right.
And so there's got to be something behind it, right, is what we're kind of hearing from various parts of the community.
And then even his response after our little snarky comment about, do you want to become his disciples, is like, listen, this man has got to be from God because otherwise this wouldn't have happened. Mm-hmm. Like, and I love how they're like, you're his disciple, but we are Moses's. I love it. They always go back to that.
Got to bring up Father Abraham or Moses, like always going back. And
that's not who, they're not the ones we worship. And like, it's Jesus.
Yeah. They don't see Jesus as the new Moses.
Or like, even like, wouldn't you think they'd want to say, we are the disciples of the God of Israel?
Yeah.
Not Moses?
Right. Exactly.
And which kind of speaks to like what Paul says later on in one of his letters when he's like, I follow Apollos, or I follow this person and that person. Mm-hmm. And he's like, it's not about who you
follow. Yeah.
It's about following God. Mm-hmm. And they're still focused on their man-made kind of things.
Yeah, and then they make this declaration to him before that they say, that you would teach us. You were born in utter sin. Wow, what a condemnation, right? And they sent him out. Look at that, sent. Look how John uses that word sent again. Pool of Siloam means sent, and they sent him out of the temple. He's cast out again. So this poor guy, he can't find community.
No.
I mean, he's probably at this stage thinking, I don't know, maybe he doesn't care, but he's like, what do I got to do to like not be an outcast?
Be part of the group.
Yeah, and so that goes to another theme of like, here, this man was suffering from his birth through his blindness. Now, and people think of him as a beggar, and now he gets healed, and you'd think his life would be like, wow, this is great. But yet he endures so much more suffering at the hands of the leaders of the church. And so what does that say about us? You know, like when we come to know Jesus and Jesus, heals us, but yet, there is more suffering in the life of a Christian.
Right, and that's what I was saying as we were talking about that. Like, we think, oh, once I become a Christian or once, I'm a follower, believe, life's going to be a cakewalk. Mm-hmm. Yet Jesus talks a lot about how we're going to suffer as Christians and take up your cross and follow me.
Yeah.
So it shouldn't come as a surprise to us that when we are a Christian, that we are faced with struggles and difficulties, that it's not just going to be a cakewalk throughout our lives.
Well, I think of people who have struggled through the battle of cancer and then finally get to a point of remission or no evidence of disease. And they're, and it's like, wow, I've been healed, right? I've kicked cancer. And then, sometimes you hear stories of a year later, cancer comes back even more aggressively.
Right.
And so there's that suffering after the suffering. But yet God and Jesus are present in both ends of the suffering, present in the healing.
Right.
And certainly God provides us the eternal healing, which, we all know. And this man received at the end, where, Jesus declares to him who he is, right to his face. And then come the words of faith. Lord, I believe. And that's where true healing came in for this man.
And you see almost the same kind of conversation from the previous week with the woman at the well when he's like, Jesus asked, do you believe in the Son of Man? The blind man answered, and who is he, sir, that I may believe in him? Jesus said, you have seen him, and it is he who is speaking to you, which is pretty much what he says to the woman at the well when she's like, who can give me this bread of life? And he's like, right here.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so, he finds eternal life in Christ, who is standing before him, speaking to him. That's got to be an amazing thing, like to have that realization that the Messiah himself came to you personally, helped you physically, and now, draws near to you to bless you eternally.
Right, and even in a sense, I feel this as a comfort as well as he's cast out. You're talking about can't find community, getting cast out from the synagogues and the temple. Yet here he is cast out into the arms of Jesus, who welcomes him.
Yeah, and look what he does after he says, "Lord, I believe." He worships him. I mean, wow, what a moment!
Right.
I just there is where that man found community and fellowship in Christ.
And you just wondered, did he become one of his followers that just kind of followed him around from city to city?
Yeah.
Because I don't think we ever hear of this man anymore. We never get his name.
Nope.
But you would think he would have just been like, can I come with? Mm-hmm. And follow?
But think of the story that he could tell back to the reason Jesus gives. This man was born blind so that the works of God may be revealed. And just his witness, his continued witness, it was a big enough thing for him to be healed physically and see again. But now you add on, I've met the Messiah and I believe in him. And, he came to me personally and changed me. I mean, the level of it amps up his story and what he has to share.
And you would think it actually maybe kind of maybe take back what I was saying earlier. Following Jesus, did he maybe just stay in town because those were the people that knew him?
Yeah.
So they would have known that he was blind.
Right.
Like if he went to some other town and he would have been like, "Hey, I was blind, but now I see," they'd been like, "How do we know you were blind?"
Yeah. More questioning.
Yeah. At least in his hometown, people could even though they were kind of debating, is it him? Is it?
Yeah.
It looks like him, but no. But at least there's some foundation laid there of okay, we know this guy's blind, but now he sees. So what's going on?
You tie it back to the woman at the well. She was an outcast. She went back into town. Who would want to listen to her? But she's like sharing the good news of what Jesus did to her, that it compelled people, at least at the very minimum, to come and check him out.
Right. Like both of them.
Yeah. And so maybe that's the part of the story that's not been told here. But as you kind of drew parallels from the woman at the well and Jesus' encounter, it really is kind of matching up. We're just not seeing the last part of it,
Right.
his interactions after this with his neighbors or things of that nature.
Right, but you have to imagine he would have been a strong proponent for Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
For whoever listened. And like I said, it would be an engaging story. Like, wait, you were blind, but now you see? Because, when you hear somebody having a miraculous healing, you're like, well, tell me more about that. I want to hear more about what happened.
Well, and I think that's probably the application for us. How has Jesus changed our life? And what can we share in the most simplistic way so that it just cuts right to it and people can see the truth of what we've experienced? And no one should like come to you and say, well, that didn't happen. Well, it did. I'm telling you,
Right.
this is my life. And hopefully people would believe that. And maybe that's the lesson for us. Just simply share. Simply share how
You don't
Jesus
have to
has
use
changed
big
you.
fancy words.
Right.
Just
Yeah.
tell your story.
Mm-hmm.
I think of that old hymn. I'd love to tell the story.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just tell our story about how we've seen Jesus or God personally acting in our lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What an amazing story for this man. I mean, it took a long time of suffering. Long suffering brought about physical healing and then even more suffering, but then eternal healing. So that's available to everyone.
Right, and when you think about it, you talk about the long time of suffering, but think about it now. That guy's probably been in heaven now for 2,000 years. And
Yeah.
how does that really, okay, let's say he lived 80, 90 years. So how does that 80, 90 years feel now compared to the 2,000 in heaven?
Oh, right. Exactly.
Feels like nothing.
Yeah. And the fact that his story has been recorded down through the ages, and the funny thing is, we don't even know the guy's name.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter, right?
We know his story.
We know what Jesus did for this person,
Right.
And yeah. Well, hey, that's why this is really a cool text and a great story. And we hope that you've enjoyed it.
Yeah, and hope you enjoyed hearing the deeper dive as we dived a little deeper into John 9. And, just go out there and tell your story. You never know the impact that it's going to have on who hears your story.